new channel there. So welcome. This is the October gathering, our webinar to talk about issues and opportunities and practices for the HyFlex learning community. And so you are here because this is going to be interesting, I'm sure. We're going to talk about the GPT that I built for in designing engagement planning for HyFlex courses. And so this is I think the fourth one in a series that we've been doing this academic year. We'll do one or two more this academic year, and that will kind of wrap us up. And so we've been following kind of the standard design stages or phases or steps that a lot of our faculty development supports these things. So we start with the strategy. Is this the right thing for you to do? It's going to be good for you, good for your students. Is it fit within your institutional needs? And then we talk about content. It's often an easy place to start, especially for faculty who are new to this. Content they often feel they're really comfortable with. So let's start with that. Then we talk about assessment planning. That's what we did last month. And then I usually kind of move into, okay, now we have these plans for content and assessment. Those seem to be like the big deals in education. But how about engagement? Engagement, I think, is the power of the opportunity we can provide in our learning environments, especially as facilitators of learning, to help students to interact not only with content and not only in the assessment aspects, and not only with us, but also with each other. And I think this is one of the big three areas of challenge, I think, in most of our experiences with HyFlex design, especially starting out. So welcome to those of you who are just joining us now. We're just launching into this. Before we get too far, what I'd like you to do, if you would, is to introduce yourself in the chat real briefly and just tell us kind of where you're coming from and what your experiences are with HyFlex. If you've done HyFlex, if you're new to HyFlex, if you're just considering HyFlex, if you're not doing HyFlex and you really don't have plans, but you might be doing online instruction, whatever it might be, just put that information in the chat, if you will, and then I will have this open over here. These windows. There it is. I suppose I should introduce myself first, huh? Well, I'm Brian Beatty, and I'm here at the San Francisco State University, and I've been here since 2003 as a faculty member. My engagement here started in 1990, I think, in the teaching credential program. I came back later for a master's degree, and that eventually led to a PhD in instructional technologies. And so now I've been kind of facilitating this program for a couple decades. We are still here. And we have a Master of Arts in Instructional Design and Technology program we run, which is now listed fully online, although I do offer courses in HyFlex mode. So when students, even though they come into a fully online program, many of them are regional, and sometimes they want to be in person for, to meet people, but also to do, certain things like work with VR equipment or whatever it might be. So anyway, we've been doing that for a long time. HyFlex Learning Community has been around since 2021. I think we launched it. And in response in particular to the vast demand for being able to teach in multiple modes with flexible learning that we saw in the pandemic. So welcome. I see a lot of familiar people here. Hello, Holly, University of Kentucky. You teach 930 students? Oh my gosh. Is that in one class?
Hybrid class.
What's that?
One HyFlex class. One HyFlex class.
Yeah, I think didn't we talk about this recently? Yeah, that's amazing. And here I am, I'm feeling challenged designing my first undergraduate fully asynchronous class of 50 students, thinking, how am I gonna do the interactive, engaging things I want to do with 50 students? I'm used to graduate education, which back in the day was, what, 8 to 12, maybe 15 students. Now we're creeping up towards 20 to 25 in our seminar graduate courses because of budget pressures. Anyway, glad to have you here. Thank you for joining us again. I see Maura Hill here, Community College of Baltimore County. You're building HyFlex classrooms. All right. If you've watched some of you may be aware of the Gartner hype cycle of all this stuff. Technology in higher education. HyFlex classrooms have been on their cycle for 4 years now, because that's what the technology industry kind of pays attention to. So what technology are you using for HyFlex classrooms? And so that it's important, but I also think that when we're talking about HyFlex design, I don't typically talk about the equipment until later on in the whole process because what I want to do is try to find equipment that fits what we need pedagogically rather than shaping our pedagogy around the equipment. But obviously, there's an interplay there. I can't design some sort of really cool, interactive, engaging thing that requires a particular technology setup if that setup's not possible. And that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It just might be in my institution, it's not possible. We just don't have the space for that. But that identifying that can help us to provide a path going forward, perhaps. So what we're doing right now is just introducing ourselves in the chat. Thank you everyone for doing that. So anyway, welcome. Dallas is here, Dean of Teaching and Learning at Community College, Baltimore County. Okay, working together on projects, I'm assuming.
Yep.
With faculty, great, excellent. Yeah, it's important. It's important to have the administrators who are overseeing, have some sort of control over what we're doing, to be part of what we're doing from the very beginning. The path to success in an institution is often having a multi-level, right, multifaceted, multi-role kind of, leadership team or strategic planning group around this who can help set up the conditions for a good pilot, help do some evaluation and decide where to go from there. So good to see you here. Thank you. Hello, Marta. Good to see you. Instructional designer at Rutgers. You completed a HyFlex course way back, pre-pandemic. Wow.
Yeah, just when it started, I think. I mean, it was offered. I don't know, maybe you offered it before then, but yeah.
Yeah, I think I probably started offering it on and off like around 2012, something like that. But oftentimes it was on a case by case basis when an institution would contact me and say, "Hey, we're thinking of doing this. Can you give us some training on this?" And so we would usually do customized workshops for them. But anyway, welcome. Good to see you again. Okay, Rosanna's here from Holy Family University in Philadelphia. It's where half of my family is from Philadelphia. Some of them still live there. So you've been teaching HyFlex undergrad courses for 3 years. Excellent. Good.
Right. My colleague and I, Claire Sullivan, we've been teaching, co-teaching and using student learning communities and doing the HyFlex all in one.
Yeah, it often works together, doesn't it?
It does. And I guess our biggest challenge is maintaining the learning communities when some choose to be
Yeah.
remote and the others are.
That's right. Yeah, that's a real challenge, and there are ways of doing it, but your situation kind of draws me to this comment I often make that when we take a course we've taught for a long time in a single mode, and we consider doing it HyFlex, and we start doing some redesign, what we find is that the new things we're going to do to basically provide the opportunities for everyone are going to also lead us to make changes to the probably the rest of the things we're doing anyway. So if I make changes to a face-to-face course because I'm adding in an online component, synchronous, asynchronous, doesn't really matter. But I create some new ways of doing engagement, especially for the online students. Oftentimes, I can also use those with face-to-face students, especially if they are out of class, right? If they are like asynchronous online discussions. I never really did that with face-to-face students when all I taught were face-to-face students. Maybe on a rare occasion we would do something like that. I did peer reviews in class. Now, when I went to HyFlex, all of that moved online, right? And that didn't mean I didn't do it in class as well sometimes, especially discussion, but that did mean I could now incorporate that into the face-to-face students' experience as well, as long as they were willing to do it. So, yeah, one of those challenges. Anyway, welcome. Thanks for joining us. Stacy from Boone, North Carolina, the director of the Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning and a math instructor at Caldwell Community College. Excellent. Good to have you here. Stacy, do you do a lot of faculty development in this area with your teams already, your faculty?
Yes, we do. We keep trying HyFlex, but our instructors just don't like it. One reason is because our instructors are required to sit in the classroom even if their students have told them that they're not coming to class, and that is
Yeah.
a local
Yeah.
that is a local restriction on our instructors, and so
Mhm.
they're not game to do it if they're going to have to sit there 100% of the time.
Yeah, that can be a real challenge. Right, certainly. For us, when we have had that encounter, like for a program just starting this out, typically in just a few courses, if the faculty feel the requirement to be there, then if they're offering the synchronous online component, they just use the classroom to teach from. And many of them are already teaching on campus for other classes as well. The challenge, of course, is if that's the only class I have to be there on campus for today, I need to be there just so I can teach online students from my classroom. Not a good idea. However, that is one of those administrative challenges, and typically what I've seen is that if once there's like a history of, the data shows, look, um, no one is showing up, and they're telling us what they intend to do, and they're following through on that. Sometimes that can change, but who knows? The same thing I found happens with office hours. If your students, if you offer flexible office hours like online and you no longer have many students, if any, showing up on campus, can you just offer those office hours remotely as well? So if you don't have to be on campus for something else, you do it from home or wherever you happen to be. That's another one of those challenges that often faculty have to kind of address. So anyway,
Well, and
yeah.
our state is requiring that we cannot do like hybrid HyFlex. It has to be
Oh
the
yeah,
100% of the
all or
time
nothing.
in a, yep, that's exactly right.
Yeah. Okay. Well, honestly, this is why HyFlex did not start in the mainstream, right? When we started this in 2000, really 2006 is when I started teaching this for a single class full time. I had no intention of ever bringing this into the mainstream of what the university would consider as one of the normal teaching modes, because it would not have survived these kinds of pressures. And so what we did in the HyFlex community, we kind of were working outside of the boundaries in many ways. And we weren't violating anything, but we also weren't trying to get a lot of attention necessarily. We were doing it for small programs or courses where there was a clear need, and no one was really going to argue with us because they wanted our students as well as much as we did. So it kind of grew up there. Now in the pandemic in particular, that changed completely. When HyFlex kind of hit the mainstream, all of a sudden now a lot of these other essentially implementation or administrative factors started becoming front and center. And on some campuses, they were able to address them and kind of move forward, to their students' benefits. But on other campuses, sometimes it was kind of like, you know what, administratively, we're not going to support this. And so it really kind of pushed it back, kind of into the margins in some ways. So anyway, there are all these factors we get to deal with. Okay. Thank you very much for being here. And I see Cherie here, from Manor College in Jenkintown, Pennsylvania. I have no idea where that is. Where
It's
is where is that?
It's outside of Philadelphia.
Outside of Philadelphia. Okay.
Yeah, near Willow Grove.
Actually, it's actually a few blocks from where I live.
Wow. Okay. So you've been teaching this way for a while.
Yeah.
You've been at the college for quite a while, and you're going to start an official pilot with 3 courses. Excellent. Good.
Yeah, the pilot's outside of my department. It's going to be our business department. It's going to do 3. They're going to try it now.
Okay. Hopefully they have a good plan for not only making it work, but evaluating it in a way that other people can see how well or what, not necessarily does it work or doesn't work. I think the answer is it works. The question is under what conditions do we need for it to be really successful?
Yeah.
What kind of content, what kind of teaching, what's the preparation for the instructors, even preparing the students in some way.
And I appreciate your comment about, the tech really matching the pedagogy and not picking it because, whatever, like doing it that at the end, what do we really need? Because I think sometimes when that's first, then people, they don't think about the components that are going to make the flex not work.
Right, that's true. And another thing I find is that if they go into a really well-equipped HyFlex classroom, sometimes that looks kind of complicated, because there may be multiple cameras, there may be multiple screens to work with. And so that complication, the higher technology can sometimes prevent, it kind of sets the stage for, oh my gosh, what am I getting myself into? And especially if I'm not really comfortable with that, or if I don't have a lot of experience saying, okay, that didn't work. What can I do? Pushing buttons or switching some things around to make it work. I think that's a hurdle. That's really can be an impediment. And then of course, if it doesn't work right the first time, okay, Well, if I'm not willing to kind of be able to work through those challenges or have the support team to do that with me, I'm not likely to continue. So pilots are great opportunities to find those things out as long as the pilot people know, hey, there are going to be hiccups here. And we've got support people to kind of, or facilities, resources, whatever it is, to kind of help us through that. That's really critical. Good. Thank you. I see we have Hari Malala here, a PhD student.
Yes. Hello, everyone.
Welcome. What do you have is your PhD have a focus already? You have
Yes.
like a,
Yes, I'm working on cognitive engagement of students in HyFlex classrooms.
oh, excellent. Yeah, I always like to see dissertations in this area, and there's a growing number. Some
Yes.
will come across my desk every year.
Oh, good.
But as you're doing the research, because you guys, what I like especially about dissertations is they often are looking at, kind of the literature review in a particular focused area that's focused on HyFlex, but also other related areas. And so I tend to learn from that as well, and I get to see what other resources are out there. So welcome.
Thank you.
When are you going to finish?
Next year.
Oh, excellent. Well, congratulations ahead of time.
Thank you.
Okay, and Miranda's here also from Northwest College in Edmonton, educational developer. All right, you helped lead implementing HyFlex across the college the last few years. Excellent. So you're back, and is HyFlex still going there at the college?
It is. I'm still trying to I feel like there's been so many, I don't know if this happens at your institutions, but they focus on a certain thing and then it kind of dies out a bit. And then there's all of a sudden a new initiative. So I'm on other initiatives such as Gen AI. So a couple
yeah.
of those things have kind of taken over and so now I'm trying to go back and figure out what's happening based on some discussions with people, because our entire business program, they piloted the entire thing HyFlex. And I feel like once I've talked to some instructors, they've kind of scaled down a bit. And so not program is, and I'm still trying to figure out it seems to be less interest. And it was kind of I don't know, it sounds bad. It was a little bit of a fad. And so I'm just trying to see, and again, I just returned back in June. So a lot of these other projects are kind of taking up time. And now I want to go back and see okay, let's see, been going and stuff like that. So I'm still learning myself.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things we've found on our campus in this kind of ebb and flow is there were more undergraduate courses doing HyFlex every year pretty much. And then when the pandemic happened, we all went online, and online teaching got a really bad reputation on campus because everybody had to go to probably something that's better called emergency remote teaching. And it didn't go all that well, across the board. And so when we came back to campus, the reaction from the leadership of the university was undergraduate programs would be essentially brought back in person and almost completely in person. They did not really want to support the online or the hybrid HyFlex kind of approach. Our graduate programs, they said, you guys do what you want. You know what you're doing, which I thought was a disservice to the undergraduate instructors. Many of them are excellent, online instructors and hybrid instructors. So, but what we found is that, of course, as our students didn't all come back to us, and then we've had this kind of continuous trickle away, that the tune is changing. The tune changing is now, okay, we kind of have to rethink what we're doing as an institution, including reaching out to students and teaching them in ways that they want to be taught, that they want to learn, essentially, which means essentially some shifting to online. So I do think that maybe we'll kind of see this swinging back a little bit, but it is interesting how that works. So what we found is that most of those undergraduate courses that were no longer allowed to be HyFlex are finding ways to provide students flexibility, even though it's kind of off book, right? So it's a face-to-face course, but if a student shows up for the class and says, look, I got to be home for this, or I've got to work this time, or whatever it might be, many of the faculty are giving them the opportunity to participate as an online learner. The challenge, of course, with that is that the faculty may not be well prepared for that. It may not be really well designed for that. It might all be kind of ad hoc, and that's not necessarily the best case scenario. Although, is it better than not giving students the opportunity to learn? Probably. Anyway, so there's a lot going on, of course, and these are things that are not new to those of us who've been doing this for a while. And it's actually it's pretty well there's a lot of literature on this. There's got to be 400 or 500 published studies around HyFlex, hybrid, multimodal engagement, including master's theses and dissertations. And so you can find a lot of the stuff online just by searching. I do try to keep a resource list in the bibliography on the site here. But I'm like 6 months behind on that, unfortunately. But that's what we're talking about here then today is using GPTs. Most of us, I'm sure, have encountered generative AI and are probably using it. And some of you may have actually built your own GPTs. I started building tools like this when I realized, one, how easy it was to do, and two, when I realized that sometimes giving someone a tool, a GPT tool to use is better for them, especially getting started in a particular process, than just letting them know, hey, just go ask ChatGPT or Gemini or whoever, Claude or whoever you want to use for this, because it gives them a structured engagement. Right. I started actually using these with students, and I've talked about that previously. It's, lots of different places. And I found that for many students, it's really powerful and effective. Some students refuse to use it. And so I give them alternatives. But in general, it helps them have that engagement. So one of the things about doing this for designers then, which, could be faculty developers, could be instructional designers, is that it gives you an opportunity to have some interaction with essentially this huge database that is familiar with how different things have been done before, and maybe can create different things that feel creative, not creative, but they feel creative, at least to us, to help us solve some of these issues. And so the tool is available, it's available in the GPT store. I actually built it a year or so ago. And the tool, I always put this little thing that says, how do I use this tool in here? This was some response to initial user testing we did with some student-facing GPTs. And it's like, well, what are the 4 best prompts I can pick here? And these all kind of follow the same format. And so this essentially is a text-based interaction. However, you can get audio from it. If you just click the audio button, you can have it read to you, and you can actually speak to it and do text to speech. I don't typically use that because I don't really like the interface, but sometimes I'm trying to learn how to do that better. So and so it's going to walk someone through that process, or you can jump in with the challenge that you particular have. And so if I wanted to start, I would, and basically one of the reasons to do a custom GPT is you can pre-populate it with files that it will use as its first line of response, getting information to respond to the learner. So I pre-populated this with some of the stuff I've done around this area with HyFlex design, especially around engagement. You can bring in like other articles, resources essentially around how should engagement work online? How about in the classroom? How about synchronous online? How's that different than asynchronous online? And so it can draw on those particular resources. And so this one will say, hey, basically, what do you want to focus on? What are your goals? And then I can help you, provide you with a structured plan after we're done with this that supports all this. And so you could start with an existing course, et cetera. So I thought that what I would show is real briefly, I'm going to walk through an example of something I'm living right now. And then what we can do also is then take on some of the edge cases, maybe some specific things that you've been challenged with, and see what a tool like this can help us figure out. So I'm going to actually try to take an older, like a 1-year-old syllabus for the course I'm inheriting, beyond the undergraduate course I mentioned, that right now has been an asynchronous only course. And I'd like to play around with the idea of making it into a HyFlex course. I'm not sure I'm not sure I'd be a true HyFlex course, because I don't know that I would get it's already on the schedule for spring. And it doesn't have a classroom assigned, but I could potentially do the online hybrid of face-to-face or synchronous and asynchronous, would provide perhaps some opportunities for students. So anyway, let's just try this out. So let's redesign a course that is async online for 50 students into a HyFlex course. And let's just see what that kind of feels like. Every time I use this, it's a little different, just like most generative AI interactions. I'll upload the syllabus. I'll upload. And and see what will do for us. What it can do is okay, now I should have had this up on the surface. So anyway, I'll go through all my files here, all these classes. So here's the older syllabus. I had hoped that I could just walk into teaching this class and, someone would let me use their materials and it'd be, okay, let me just put my name all over this and it would be great. Yeah, it ain't gonna work that way. And that happens a lot, because I like to teach it differently than someone else does. And so this is basically going to give us, hey, here's what it looks like we're looking at here. You've got the course. Nicely, it's a learning with digital technologies class. And so I feel like even with undergraduates, these are upper division students, and it's a general education class. And so it fills. I'll get 50 students, no problem. I actually offered to do 100 students to my college. I said, look, if you give us a little wiggle room on our enrollment in the graduate courses, because I'd prefer to have 15 rather than 25, I'll do twice as many because I'll use generative AI or other kinds of techniques to kind of scale. If you can teach a class of 900 students online and be effective without a fleet of TAs, I'm sure that others can teach a class of even 100 asynchronous online students without that same non-existent fleet of TAs. So this is what it's looking at now. Right now, the design is weekly discussion forums, major assignments, focus on digital tools, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm not going to change the focus really. I'm going to add generative AI as kind of a theme through here. And I'm going to need some help thinking through of, okay, what if I have some students who have a real legitimate um, reaction to generative AI that basically leads them to say, I'm not going to use it at all. Either because I don't trust it, I don't like the business model, or it's in the environmental concerns. Those are all legitimate concerns. And so I'm going to have to try to find a strand through that. And I'm wondering if it can help me kind of work through that. That's a tricky thing, I think. But I also don't like the way these discussion forums have been done before, because these are discussion forums that have, there's like a rubric with up to 10 points on there, including, kind of what they're talking about. And my preference for discussion forums has been to create them so that they are more interactive and engaging and not a written assignment so much as a conversational assignment. Have an interaction around the content. I try to have them have interactions that help them lead to like a written assignment, but treat those separately. And so here is a simple, a really kind of high level, maybe suggestion of how this might kind of work. This is like a typical, kind of vanilla flavored, it seems like one. But what this is doing is it's pulling some assignments and some projects out of the syllabus. Say, hey, for your digital storytelling project, you can do hands-on lab work, do peer reviews in class, and then or you can move across all of this. And so it's going to give us, what I find is that it gives us some recommendations that are really kind of, hey, this is maybe a best practice for this kind of mode, right? So for example, a peer review in class, compare that to a peer review done asynchronously. That's all text-based. Maybe there's some video in there. It could be possible. Or a live Zoom kind of reacts. What's the difference for students? Is one better than the others? I remember in my earlier days of teaching pre-HyFlex, I did all the peer reviews in class, and they brought in 3 copies of their printed paper draft, and they sat around a table, and they each table with, I guess, 4 people, whatever it is. They would write comments for like 20 or 30 minutes, and then they would have 20 or 30 minutes to share their reactions with each other and talk through that. So we took about an hour out of a 2-hour and 45-minute a week class for that. And then once we started doing HyFlex, I thought, asynchronous learners, they're not going to have that experience. And so I tried for a while to say, well, okay, asynchronous learners, exchange your papers with someone else online and give each other feedback. Well, guess how well that worked? That was totally inconsistent. Some of them had great feedback experiences. Most of them probably did not. And then our learning management systems became better at managing peer feedback for us. And so now I have the learning management system do all that. So in my case, for this kind of suggestion with peer reviews in class, I'm not doing that. And so maybe I can talk about that. Let's talk about that. I want them all done the same way. And what I did is essentially said is let's not take the class time to do peer reviews, even though it's a valuable interaction. I think that the interaction that they can have through the learning management system managed peer review, which is all on their own time, kind of text-based peer review, is good enough to give me that value of the class, the synchronous session back. And it does another thing. It sets a kind of a more of an equivalent approach. Now, we don't want to just make it all the same if it's worse, just to have it all the same. But in making it all the same, I get to actually have students in every mode interacting with students in every other mode through the peer review process. So it upholds the value of like a learning community, right? Kind of we're in this together. It's not 3 different classes or 2 different classes. It's one class, and we're all working in different ways to do this. And so that's why I've chosen to do that. And so what I would want to do is kind of train the tool for me to say, okay, this is how I like to do peer reviews. One of the nice things also about using a custom GPT in my own account, I'm using my external account right now. So all the links that are showing here, everything that you see, the GPTs, they're all available in the GPT store at OpenAI or chatgpt.com. I also have an account that I use inside the university environment. And I do that when I'm working with students in particular. And all the GPTs I have for students are all available there as well. It learns, though, how I like to interact. And if I wanted to do, if I was doing this for a particular course design project, is that I would do all my interactions within that project. And in this particular interface, it remembers all that. It's got that history it can draw back on. So if I tell it in this course design, this engagement planning, I want to do peer reviews, the same for everybody. It's gonna know that. So next time this comes up in an engagement planning conversation, it's probably going to, I would expect it to say, okay, I know, yeah, we know that you like to do peer reviews this way, and so this is what we're going to plan. And so here's the flow that it says. Here's how it could work. One of the things I like about the way this is working is, the way these tools interact with us, they often will respond to us and then ask us, okay, do you want to go to the next step with this? How else can I help you with this? Sometimes that may be challenging if we allow our tools for students to do that a lot, because it will move towards doing their work for them if they let it, or if we let it. And so in tools like that or GPTs like that, sometimes we can put in language that basically says, don't recommend another step. Or somehow putting cautions into that so that it's not automatically doing that. Now, when I'm using these for productivity for myself, I like that, right? Because sometimes it'll suggest ways of additional enhancements to my planning that I hadn't thought of, right? And so I didn't ask it for this peer review workflow, but it's nice to see how the tool envisions what that workflow might be. And when I look through this is what we do, and this is exactly how we do our process. We submit drafts. The system, you use Canvas. I think it knows I use Canvas. It might be actually in the syllabus. That assigns partners. They review and they use a shared rubric, and they give and receive feedback. And now it doesn't say anything about this, but I put my own feedback into that as well. And then they reflect, and then turn in a final draft. And so here's an example then for the specific tool. And it's just giving me some suggestions on when the feedback should be due, various things like that. Yeah. So that's a lot that if it's new to me, that could be really helpful. Okay, so peer review. Now, if I scroll back up here, I'm wondering what else in here might be what I might think is like a pedagogical challenge this way. So here's the other thing. Here's another one right there, reflection activities. I really like this idea of reflection for students. It's kind of helps their metacognition. It's really important part of a kind of a constructive learning process is when they're reflecting on what they're learning, and their process of learning too. And so what I currently do in my classes is I have them do a reflections forum every week. So it's an online post that everybody makes every week before the next class starts about their process of learning and what's going well, what's not going well. This is also doing the thing where it's taking like, okay, a best practice or a common practice in face-to-face classrooms is doing an exit ticket, right? where before they leave the class or as they leave the class, they're turning in a piece of paper, maybe a note card, and that has like, what did I learn? What I wanted to learn, or whatever it might be, as a way of getting out, essentially a little mini reflection. And then it has a different one, a different one here for synchronous online, and a third one, of course, for asynchronous. So I might actually, maybe the tool could be different, but what I'd rather have, I don't want to do this all three different ways. Okay. It doesn't mean I would never do an exit ticket for classroom students or have some sort of interaction with them, but that probably the synchronous online students, I would do the same thing, because I want these people to be doing as much the same as possible, just because I don't want them to feel like I'm an outsider here, even though I'm in the same synchronous meeting. This one can't be, the other two. It has to be more like this. And so if I want to do it equivalently, well, same thing, that reflection activities. So let's see what it says about reflection activities. I like reflection activities, but I want them all to do the same thing. I'm going to just say, I'm going to reference learning community and all that. What can you suggest? Now, I think one of the reasons why I'm actually okay with it suggesting different things like this is because some faculty would prefer to maybe have more splitness. And I don't think that everyone needs to teach HyFlex the way I teach HyFlex, as far as much of the things as I combine. I've learned over the years to do the things I do because I've got good rationale for them. And I know that sometimes the things I do aren't exactly best practice in online learning in particular. I think they're still good practice, but I have a reason for doing that. And let's go through this, and then maybe there's another one we could talk about. Or if you have one that you'd like to see also, let's work through that, bring that up. So, okay, so here we go. Shared reflection activity, strengthen learning community. Yeah, that's all true. Yeah, exactly. Okay, a unified reflection routine works well, blah, blah, blah. So that's the setup, right? So here's what it's going to suggest now. Structured reflection at the end of each module or major activity. Same 3-question prompt or format. Yeah, so this is pretty common as a reflection prompt. And I think there's some value in doing a structured reflection like that. I don't do that though. I tell them I want you to talk about something about your learning experience this week in the class. That's not necessary, but I don't want you to necessarily focus on the content of what you're learning. I want to hear about your process. And the reason why I do that is because I actually use these reflections. I read all of them every week. And they can see each other's reflections each week, but I use them for formative assessment on the course in the course design as well. So I hear things from them like, I was confused about this assignment. You know, it was one date here in the syllabus and one date here in Canvas, and that's a problem. That's my problem. But I would not have known that because I'm not. Once a course starts, I'm not typically checking everything again because I'm supposed to do that before. So if I miss something, this is an opportunity for me to hear that from them, and then I can go back and fix it and then apologize or put it into an announcement. Hey, I fixed that. Thanks for telling me about that. So these are then design decisions that you, as a designer, or the faculty are working together as a team, will make decisions about how you would structure these. So there's nothing wrong with doing it this way, especially if students know that, hey, if you want to say something else, go ahead. You're free to say something else. I'm looking forward to that. Modes of completion: in person, write in class, submit to Canvas. Yeah. Okay. So I'm wondering, so why would I type in chat or breakout group? Why would I write in class or submit, write in class, etc.? I wouldn't bother doing that. And so here we go, e-portfolio. Okay. And you could actually bring in some other ideas. So you could dive deeper into any of these. And oh, well, here you go, a reflection assistant. I don't think I need that. Reflection coach. Now, someone, especially since they're all adults I'm working with, so I don't know, maybe they know this. I do often will take a reflection forum at the beginning of a semester, especially like for an undergraduate class. I will probably put a few samples that I'll just make up. Actually, I'll probably have ChatGPT make this up, create some context, and so I can kind of show them what a meanable reflection might look like. And then I often will talk about them a little bit too in my weekly comments to them in the summary. Okay, so, and then of course, it will give me templates or other kinds of things. It will give me a plan if I want. So what's another challenge? So that's this course. I don't want to spend all the time talking about this course. I actually, to be honest, I haven't shown this to anybody yet, but I also came up with another way of doing this, especially for this course. And this course I just called Engagement Pathway Designer. This was the first GPT I built that was largely co-built with ChatGPT. So I went in rather than trying to map it all out myself. Okay, here's what I want it to do, and here are the instructions I think that need to go into that, and walking through the wizard kind of approach. I decided to just put the challenge up to ChatGPT. Hey, I need a custom GPT to do this. Here's my challenge. What can you help me? And then so we went through a co-design process in about 30 minutes, honestly, and came up with something that looks like this. And so it's basically a consultant to help me design engagement in different ways. Now, this is designing for an online course. Guess what? If I design this well with a tool for an online course designer, what's gonna happen for the HyFlex application? It is all gonna work perfectly there, with the exception of having maybe some variations for synchronous paths. Unless I build that into my interaction pattern here, and of course the face-to-face. And so if I can get that, oftentimes I'll talk about, hey, if you can design the online path, if you're doing an online asynchronous path in your HyFlex, which many people do, if you can design that first and make that really, really strong, you are set up for success in the synchronous path and in the face-to-face path, because all of those resources and many of those activities you design, and probably all of the assessments, will work just as well for your other modes. And then you'll make adaptations to the other modes to take advantage of, like the classroom situation or the synchronous situation, rather than trying to do everything asynchronously that you would have to in an asynchronous course, like make decisions, or how about group projects? How are you going to manage those? So anyway, this one, I actually also gave it some more information from, some of these readings, either referring to the readings or, putting some things in there inside of our environment. And these are things that I often rely on when I'm talking about these ideas, as it's some of the fundamental reasons why we do things the way we do. And so then it will create, if I want it to, it'll give me weekly engagement maps. It'll craft these discussion prompts. And what I find is that nothing it ever does for me is good enough right out of the box. But oftentimes it's given me some ideas that I might use and reshape for myself. And a lot of times it'll suggest things I just hadn't thought about that. It's a good idea. It's actually better than the thing I was going to do. And so it does really turn into a co-designing process. And so this is what I'm going to be doing as I'm designing, kind of the new asynchronous class for that. And then if I want to, I might use the engagement planner for HyFlex. Say, okay, well, what if I made this if I added a synchronous component? What are some of the nuances of that? And that tool might, because it's got more HyFlex in its engine, HyFlex information in its engine, and recommendations and guidance, might be something that I can use in that situation. Quite honestly, this tool could do that too, because it can find a lot in HyFlex in its big database. There's enough that was out there, over the last 20 years, that it will draw a lot from that. As a matter of fact, let's say, okay, what if I wanted to do this as a HyFlex course? Can you help with engagement for that? And I don't know what it's going to say. I've never asked that question. Of course it can. Why? Because it's generative AI. It wants to give me what I'm asking for it. So it probably would do a pretty good job on that too. Here it is. This is probably very similar, although this is kind of brought into the teaching precedents from the community of inquiry. So your challenges with engagement, we can go back to, especially in HyFlex. Let's go back to this one, and let's start a new chat. What are some of your major challenges? And let's see what it can do to kind of help us with some solutions. And you may have solutions already, but maybe there's a solution you've tried, it's not working quite like you like. I wonder how well a tool like this could help us kind of work through some of those other details. What do you think?
That's similar to the tool I was describing in the chat box. It's open source. and
Mhm.
it's called Play Lab. I don't know if you've
Uh-huh.
heard of that one before or not, but what it does is it allows you to write prompts for it, and then it will act as a chat bot to do those things that you want it to do. So like in my math classes, when I have a lower level math class and they're talking about budgeting, I can have it present scenarios to the students and then interact with the students and tell them why or why not their choice for the scenario was a good choice, or things that they could do to make it a better choice. And I use Chat GPT to help me write the prompts because I'm not a coder. So
Uh-huh.
I can have Chat GPT write a prompt for PlayLab and then paste it into PlayLab.
So you can see what I have on the screen here. Is this the Play Lab you're talking about? It found something at MIT in the Median Lab. It may not be. This is called Playful Learning Lab, maybe. But it thinks it found what I wanted it to find, and so it's kind of following this trail. So Play Lab, okay. Yeah,
No, I
honestly,
think that's the right one because
yeah,
it
I
says
don't
it's a
think.
sandbox. I think it is because it
Oh,
says it's a sandbox for inquiry-based learning.
okay,
And so that's kind of what they're doing. It asks them questions and then they engage with it.
okay, maybe that is the same thing then.
Yeah.
So if I was playing with this tool and trying to get some design help out of this, and it brought this up, the first thing I personally would do is I would go try to find this on my own and say, okay, is it talking about one, does it actually exist? Most of the time now, I think that when it's given me references and resources, usually they're there. I have found one or two recently that, I can't find this. Either it's there and I just can't find it. So what use of it is it to me? Or you made this up. And I think it still does that sometimes. It's better than it used to be, I believe. Anyway, I would go check to see if I could find it. And then I would take a look and see what it suggests that we might do. The way to figure this out probably for most of us, okay, let me go use it. Let's see what it does. Let's play with it a little bit. Um, do you think that now with your experience with that, do you think that would support learners who are in different modes in the same class?
I do because based on what their answers are, they get different kinds of engagement with it. One thing that I did learn though is that part of the prompt needs to be to ask them their name, because I do have one student who, when he interacts with it, he stops doing the math and just asks it to draw dragons. and and the chat bot will say, well, it will draw the dragon for him, and then it will say, would you like to get back to the math now?
Uh-huh. Oh, I like that
So
coding in there.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it does. I mean, whatever they answer, it's gonna reflect that in its response to the student. So yeah, I do think it would be good for people who are in different areas of learning.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, especially if it's designed for someone to use on their own. But a lot of those tools that are designed to use on your own, like it works really well for someone one-on-one. You can use those in a group environment as well. That's what I found typically, having students work together on this. Does it give you any does it record anything, like you could get a report on any of this, or would that be up to the student to share with you? Are you
I
familiar?
can go in my account and see every conversation. So that's why I said that I learned
Oh,
that I need to ask,
ah,
as part of the prompt, I need to ask them their
nice.
name so that I can tell
Got it.
who's actually responding in that way.
Yeah.
Because I have no idea which student is asking it to draw dragons, because I didn't ask it to ask them for their name this time, because it's the first time I've ever used it.
Yeah. So that's a big difference between a custom GPT built within a platform and one built within like a public platform like OpenAI's platform, because their platform won't do that unless probably there's got to be some special stuff put into the coding. I don't even know if it's possible. Maybe if it's connected through some technical API or something like that. But I know that like when my students are using the GPTs that I create, I don't see anything that they're doing. And so what I do then is I ask them, like, for example, I say, hey, look, we're going to use this Quiz Me GPT, do the readings and then take a quiz on it, and then give me a summary of your quiz and copy and paste it into this Word doc or this Google form or whatever it is. That's my conception for how I would use it, like for a pre-class quiz. Do the quiz, So, and why? I don't really care what score you're getting. You're going to get credit for, maybe you get credit for the quiz score, but I'm actually not collecting the score. I just want to know that you did something around the reading to prepare for class so that you're prepared for the discussion. And when I do things like that, I find students are generally much better prepared for some sort of more interactive and application-oriented discussion in the class. When I don't do that, it's really obvious, even with grad students, some people do the preparation and many don't. And, and so I don't know. I mean, so that technique kind of works for that to that end to have a richer synchronous discussion. But I don't see that, and I can have the GPT. You can code it so that you create an action into, like, I'm just talking about ChatGPT now. So it can take a portion of that and write it out to another file, like into a Google Doc or into a Google, probably into a Google form as well. But I don't have that. I can't do that myself. I have to get help to do that. And I've only been dabbling that with a volunteer grad student who said, hey, I think I can try that. So anyway, yeah, so you could put in, and what, a lot of times you can put in a specific tool you plan to use. Hey, how can I use this with all three? How might this work? Or things like that. And okay, so that's a great one. Actually, and I know some faculty on campus. And sometimes it's more tech savvy faculty, like our computer scientists, who don't use anybody's generative AI because they don't trust who's looking at the data. And our university system has to deal with OpenAI, and so we have this protected data space. And the idea is that data doesn't go out to feed the public model. It all stays in-house. And yet many of the faculty who know the most about it, or at least some of them, say, no, I'm not going to use that. I don't know. I don't really know what they're doing with the data. I don't know if anyone's recording this. And I don't know how much of that is oversensitivity, but part of me thinks, like, they probably know a lot more about this than I do. And so if that's a concern for them, it may be a concern to others. And I do think we have to respect that concern. On the other hand, I think that, it's kind of like having a calculator or using the internet to help learning. At some point, this is basically for anyone in the information working space. This is probably going to be a tool that's got long legs. It's probably going to be here, and it's already being put into it. So using it can help us understand it. Yet, on the other hand, we're still early in that. I don't think we've seen I don't think we have seen the end of the conversation around who's got data, who owns data, how is data being used and shared, etc. Yeah, Miranda, that's a good question. Does it give me stats and data? No, this one doesn't. Even the ones in my environment don't. I think someone can see utilization rates, like how often it's used, because occasionally I will find I can see that data somewhere, but I don't even remember where. And sometimes it's like really gross data, like, oh, this has more than 100 uses, right? Now,
Yeah, it's more like I'd be wondering if you can see what people are searching for in your GPT, and then if so, like maybe you have to add more information in your GPT or something.
yeah, I don't know enough about it to say. I don't have access to that data, and I don't know if there's a way to get that. Now, this is another reason, though. If you have an institution or some platform that you can use that has its own way of doing GPTs, they can build that kind of stuff into the interface, because clearly those interactions are there, right? Someone types into a chat box and hits enter, boom, some database is getting that information. And whether they keep that or not is up to the platform designers, but they could easily design it to do that and then have ability to search through it and to give you that kind of data. So I would say that it's certainly possible. Do any of your institutions have your own AI space like that, generative AI space? I know some large, especially research level institutions are doing things like that. We don't, at least not that I know of. I do some work with some European universities too, and some of them are building their own AI, basically their own AI environment. So they're creating their own large learning models, and sometimes they're large-ish, but they're really focused on a subset. And other organizations are doing this as well. This is why I'm saying that eventually anyone involved in information work is going to be working with these kinds of tools. I have a family member who works for a large federal agency, probably not working for money anymore, at least not for a while. But he said they created their own AI space, and this is a legal organization, and they want the leaders were saying, hey, we want you to try to use this or test it out at least for us. And he said like his first 4 questions he asked the AI tool about the work they were doing, it was wrong on all of them, and he would follow up with a no, you're wrong. What about this? And it would give him another wrong answer. And so his feedback was, we cannot use a tool like this, at least not now. Because it wasn't well enough trained, and it couldn't do any kind of the deeper thinking or critical thinking that's required in that space. Because you can imagine in a legal world, you've got case law, you've got other kinds of things going on, and making those connections and the inferences and the implications and the nuances among that, it's really complex stuff. A lot like some of the complex learning that we're trying to help our students do. Which is one reason why I try to build tools that help students through process more than that could possibly do the thinking for them. I know students who will go out and they'll use generative AI, any flavor, and they'll try to have it do the work for them. And when I give them a tool, I kind of want to get in the middle of that and say, look, let me help you with the process that we're doing here. Let me ask you good questions about what you're trying to learn. Let me give you an interaction with another persona that can help, bring in some new ideas and then ask you your ideas and then react to those ideas rather than, giving you the summary of the article and say, okay, here's what you can say in your discussion forum post, and you get full credit for whatever it is you're doing. Creating GPTs, turns out, is really easy to start with. You can find easy to follow YouTube videos and other kinds of videos. It's all over the internet. Every conference I've been to this last year, half the sessions are about using generative AI, and half of those are about custom GPTs. All you have to do is have the ability to get into a premium account on one of these, typically a premium account, and then you just kind of have to find a way to, to start in ChatGPT. You just click on, if you have a paid account, a plus account or higher, I pay my $20 a month right now. And so I just click on the Explore tab and it gives me the Create tab over here. Once I get into Create, if I know what I want to do or I've worked with GPT, give me a script, I go right to Configure and I just type in, I just copy and paste right into this. Or I can use the wizard approach, and it's real simple to use the wizard approach. What do you want to do? What would you like to make? And it will ask you questions, using kind of this natural language interaction. And in the end, within 5 minutes, you can probably have a working draft of a relatively simple GPT. I was doing this in a workshop a couple of weeks ago, and within 15 minutes, I took an idea from kind of the participant group. We went into the create mode, and we just answered some questions. And within 15 minutes, we had already built the GPT and done at least one round of review. Okay, let's try it out, and one iterative cycle. And so at the end of that 15 minutes, I gave her the link to the GPT, say, look, here it is. And here's the script. If you want to recreate it in your account, so you own it and you can do editing for it, you've got it. It doesn't take long to do simple things. It takes longer to get it to do exactly what you want when it's more complex. The more complex you try to build this, the more challenging it can sometimes be to get it to behave like you like. Especially if that prompt instruction gets longer and longer. It doesn't handle that. It handles it better than it used to, but it's still not there. It doesn't. Sometimes it will override itself in different ways, and a lot of it's experimentation. The other thing about custom GPTs is as the fundamental platform continues to change and advance, the GPT behavior may change as well. And so it's important to go back and revisit them to make sure they're still doing and behaving the way you expected them to, and the way they had maybe 6 months ago, now that you've gone through another revision, like we're in GPT-5 or different versions of GPT-5, things like that, if you're using that platform. So it is kind of a brave new world. It's I think it's really interesting. I think it's not a perfect situation, but it is fascinating to me how a tool like this can support us in our creative endeavors, teaching, learning, and other things that we're doing, in ways that were just never really possible for at the same speed and at the same scale. All right, well, we're right at time, and so we'll stop the recording now. And if you have any remaining questions or want to talk about this anymore, I'll hang out for a few more minutes. Otherwise, I'll see you maybe in the online space in the near future, and maybe we can share some ideas about how to do this better for all of us.
Thank you.